The floor beneath me cracked with light as the alarms tore through the palace. I was Princess Calith Vessera Nyx, heir to the Embryon Dominion, and someone had just tried to kill me in the middle of my own selection ceremony. The explosion came from the East Gallery, where the noble houses sat in their glittering rows. Smoke rolled across the marble floor. Guards shouted. Suitors who had spent the whole evening posing for cameras were now scrambling over each other to reach the exits. Not one of them looked back for me. Except him. A hand closed around my wrist and pulled me down behind a stone pillar just as a second blast shattered the ceiling glass above where I had been standing. I hit the floor hard, my ceremonial robes tearing at the seam, and looked up into the face of a human named Colin Ashby, the lowest-ranked attaché in Earth's entire diplomatic mission. "Stay down," he said, like I was any other person in the room, and not the future ruler of 1,000 worlds. "I want to tell you how I got here, to this floor, to this moment, because none of it makes sense unless you understand what my life had been before he pulled me down behind that pillar. For as long as I could remember, I had been wanted by everyone and chosen by no one. My mother, the reigning empress, decided years ago that my marriage would seal an alliance strong enough to hold the Dominion together. So the court built a selection, a public parade of suitors from every allied species, broadcast to 1,000 worlds so the galaxy could watch me pick a husband like I was choosing a piece of furniture. The suitors were extraordinary, at least on paper. There was General Vorin of the Jean military caste, who could recite my family lineage back 9 generations, without pausing for breath, and who spoke to me only in formal verse, as if I were a monument rather than a person. There were the Solari twin princes, Kale and Ren, who literally glowed when they smiled, a side effect of their bioluminescent bloodline, and who competed with each other to compliment me in increasingly poetic ways, until the words stopped meaning anything at all. There was Hask, a Kryvax hive lord, who offered me command of an entire battle fleet as a courtship gift, like I might be swayed by warships the way another woman might be swayed by flowers. Every one of them wanted the throne beside me. Every one of them wanted the alliance my name could buy. Not one of them, in 3 months of ceremonies and dinners and staged photographs, had asked me what I actually thought about anything. Colin was different from the very first day, though not because he tried to be. He was not even part of the selection. Earth was too new to the galactic community to be considered a serious contender, so his government sent him only as an observer, someone to stand quietly in the back of the room and take notes for a species still learning where it fit among the stars. He did not bow correctly. He did not know the 17 forms of address required when speaking to a member of the royal house. During our very first formal dinner, he told General Vorin, in front of half the nobility, that reciting someone's ancestry was a strange way to introduce yourself, and when the general demanded an apology, Colin simply said he did not have one to give, because he had meant what he said. I remember covering my mouth to hide a laugh that had no place at a diplomatic dinner. I remember the way the whole table went silent, waiting to see how a mere attaché would survive insulting one of the most powerful men in the Dominion. He survived by not caring at all, and something about that pulled at me in a way none of the poetry or warships ever had. After that dinner, I found reasons to walk near the human delegation's quarters. I told myself it was curiosity about an emerging species, nothing more, though even then, I think I knew I was lying to myself. We began talking, first about small things. He told me about his home city, somewhere called Bristol, about narrow streets and gray skies, and a river that flooded every winter. I told him about growing up inside a palace built from living crystal that changed color with my moods, which he found strange and wonderful, in a way that made me see my own home differently for the first time in years. Then one evening, 3 weeks before the selection ceremony, I made a mistake that nearly cost me everything. I asked him what he thought of the trade agreement my mother was negotiating with the outer colonies, a policy I had helped draft myself, and privately did not believe in. Every advisor who had ever heard that policy praised it without hesitation, because praising the crown princess was simply what one did. Colin frowned, thought for a long moment, and then told me it was a bad policy, that it would strip resources from smaller worlds and call it partnership, while giving them nothing back. He explained his reasoning clearly, without flattery, without softening it because I was royalty. We argued about it for over an hour, both of us refusing to back down, and by the end, I realized he was right about most of it, and I told him so. No one had ever disagreed with me like that. No one had ever cared enough about getting it right to risk making me angry. I started finding him after that, not out of duty, not out of curiosity, but because talking to him felt like being a person again, instead of a symbol standing at the front of a parade. He never once asked about the throne. He never mentioned the alliance his own government hoped Earth might someday form with the Dominion. When I asked him directly why he never brought up politics between us, he said something I have never forgotten. He said he liked me, not my title, and that if the two of us ever became something more, he wanted it to be because of who I actually was, not because of what I could give him. That was the moment everything shifted, though I did not understand how much until the night of the sabotage. The explosion in the East Gallery had been planted by a faction within the Jin military, furious that General Voron's courtship was failing, while a nobody from an unranked species kept appearing at my side in the palace corridors. They wanted to remove the distraction before the selection ceremony could be corrupted by what they saw as an embarrassment to galactic order. Colin did not know any of that when he grabbed my wrist and pulled me behind the pillar. He only knew that the ceiling was falling and that the woman standing near it needed to move. We crouched together as debris rained down around the gallery, and he shielded me with his own body without a moment of hesitation, without calculating what it might cost him if something happened to either of us. Guards eventually reached the room and secured the area, dragging away 2 Jin operatives who had planted the second device. The whole event lasted less than 4 minutes, but it changed the direction of my entire life. 2 days later, the selection ceremony resumed, delayed, but not cancelled, because tradition in the Dominion does not bend easily, even for attempted murder. I stood on the ceremonial platform in front of every noble house, every allied delegation, every camera broadcasting to 1,000 worlds, and I looked out at the suitors lined up below me, each of them polished and perfect and utterly hollow. General Voron stood taller than the others, certain that recent events had only strengthened his position, since he assumed the sabotage would frighten me back into choosing someone properly powerful. My mother sat on her throne beside the platform, watching me with the calm expectation of a woman who believed the outcome had already been decided. I was supposed to walk down the line and place a ceremonial pendant around the neck of whichever suitor I chose. Instead, I stepped past all of them. I walked to the edge of the platform, down into the observer section where the human delegation stood, and I found Colin exactly where he always stood, quiet, watching, expecting nothing. The room went utterly silent. I could hear my own pendant chain shifting against my palm. I told him, in front of the entire galaxy, that he was the only person in 3 months of ceremonies who had ever wanted me, instead of what I represented, and that if the Dominion could not accept that, then perhaps the Dominion needed to change rather than me. The uproar that followed was immediate. Noble houses shouted objections. General Voron demanded the ceremony be nullified. Somewhere in the crowd, a Solari prince simply laughed in disbelief, as though the whole scene were a performance staged for his entertainment. My mother rose from her throne, her expression unreadable, though I caught something in her eyes that might have been quiet approval hidden beneath the shock. I placed the pendant around Colin's neck anyway. He did not know what to say at first. He looked at the pendant, then at me, then at the sea of furious nobles watching us, and he asked quietly if I understood what I had just done to both of our lives. I told him I understood exactly what I had done. I had spent my entire existence being desired by people who wanted a crown, a bloodline, an alliance stitched together through marriage. He was the first person who ever looked at me and saw only me, without calculating what I was worth to him. That, I told him, was worth more than every warship, every glowing smile, every recited generation of ancestry the galaxy could offer. The political storm that followed lasted for months. Alliances shifted. Some houses threatened to withdraw support from my mother's rule entirely. Earth's own government scrambled to understand what their quiet attaché had just done to relations with an empire 1,000 times larger than their own world. But none of that changed what I already knew standing on that platform, pendant in hand, heart finally choosing something for itself instead of for the throne. Everyone had wanted me. I only ever wanted him.